Someone recently asked me about term limits and what my opinion is on term limits. And I want to share with you what my response was because this has come up a number of times. I'm elected, and so people sometimes want to know how I feel about the issue. So I thought I'd put this together. Let's first talk about executive branch, and then we'll talk about the legislative branch. And I've served in both. Now, executive branch capacity could be something like a mayor or a sheriff, governor, or a president. That's executive branch capacity. And I've served as a mayor and a sheriff, and those are executives. So I knocked off somebody who was there for 14 years as well as somebody who's there for 25 years. So not only have I served in the executive branch, I've knocked off people that have been in those capacities for extended periods of time. And based on what I've seen and based on my experience and what I inherited, I think term limits for executive branch capacity is a good thing. Because when you have that concentration of power in the executive, and you don't have that in the legislative body, but when you have that concentration of power in the executive branch in that one person, term limits are a good thing. You don't want somebody to be there so long that they have figured out how to manipulate the process. You don't want to have someone who's been there for too long that can manipulate the process and have all that power in that one position. So I think term limits for executive branch capacity is a good thing. Now, if we talk about legislative capacity could be something like school committee or a city council, alderman or selectman. It can be a representative or a senator. And I've served as a state representative, so I've served in that capacity as well. Now, I don't support term limits. And you might be saying, you're crazy. How can you not support term limits for somebody, these senators and representatives who have been there for 20 years, 30 years, sometimes even 40 years? How can you not support term limits for somebody that's been there for that long? Let me explain why. In a legislative body, no one person has all the power. It's spread out among all of the different members. And you want that diversity of experience. You want the person who just got there, and you want the person that's been there for 20 or 30 years that has the institutional knowledge. It's not one person. It's spread out among everybody. No one person has all the power. Additionally, when you have term limits on a legislative body, that actually destroys the institutional knowledge, and it opens it up for lobbyists to have a bigger influence. And that can be a really bad thing. We don't want that. And that's not my opinion. That's what the research has shown on the matter. Places that have implemented term limits have seen a greater role and a greater influence of lobbyists. You've got a special situation, though, with a speaker and a Senate president. With a speaker, they're acting, or a Senate president. With a speaker and Senate president, those are legislators acting in an executive capacity. And for that reason, I do support term limits for a speaker or a Senate president, because that executive capacity where they do have a lot of power, that can end up being a bad thing. So, my opinion on that has changed over the years. I used to not think that way, but now as I've matured and grown in my time in politics, I've seen that having a speaker or a Senate president have term limits is actually a good thing. It's not an indictment on any of the people. It's just what happens with the position. So again, to summarize this, with the concentration of power in the executive branch, I think term limits are a good thing to keep that power in check. On the legislative body, when no one person has all of the power and the power is spread among a lot of different people, you want the diversity of experience. You don't want to open it up for lobbyists to come in and have a greater influence. I think term limits are a bad thing because they hurt that. Additionally, on that last point of the legislators, some representatives have been there for a long time and they're doing a good job. And if you can't vote for the person who you think is doing a good job, even though they've been there a long time, then that's not really supporting the democratic process. Again, it's different with the executive capacities. I've served in two. The concentration of power can be a really bad thing. But with the legislative body, you have a diversity. You've got the power and spread out, and you want to be able to choose your representative, whether it's on the school committee, on the town council, in the House or in the Senate, at the state or the federal level. You want to be able to choose your representative. If you've got somebody who's been there for too long, they're a bump on a log, they're entrenched, vote them out. You've got term limits. They're called elections. But if you want to get rid of somebody, vote them out. If you don't get rid of that person, if the people don't vote that person out who's a bump on the log, the people get the representative they deserve, for better or for worse. So hopefully this is giving you a little bit to think about. Curious about your opinion. Feel free to leave a comment. Thank you.